everybody, and welcome to the Living Well podcast with your host, me, Liv Hill. Thrilled to have you guys here today. On today's episode, we are going to talk about a very hot topic, a taboo topic to some people, which is semaglutides, GLP-1s. Just going to have some open conversation about that, hoping to educate you, answer some questions, start the dialogue. So if you are curious about GLP-1s, you may have a really strong opinion about them one way or another. We're going to get into it and we're going to talk about it today. So I'm excited to have that discussion. All right, so what is going on over here? What's going on in the world? It's kind of been a chill week, which is nice. We haven't had a lot going on. I think coming off of volleyball season, which you guys know was just insane for us, running around crazy, all the things. I traveled a couple weeks ago, did a nutrition seminar out at Terre Haute, Indiana. Had a fantastic time with that group out there. So it was just a lot going on. So we've got like 2 weeks here where I don't want to jinx myself. It's kind of chill. And then we'll be going to National Youth Convention over in Nashville for a couple of weeks, and then the Christmas season kicks in. So we've got a lot of other things going on. So I'm kind of enjoying this. I don't have my Christmas tree up. I know we talked about that on the last episode. I don't think I'm going to put it up this weekend either. Maybe next weekend. Next weekend for sure going to put it up, but actually it's supposed to be pretty warm tomorrow. I think me and the girls are just going to go out and maybe get our nails done, get our eyebrows waxed, like have just a girls' day of chill. All right, so let's jump into talking about semaglutides, GLP-1s. Let's have some discussion about that. On the topic of this, I do plan on having a guest on soon that is going to get into the medical side of that. So we're going to hit on it just a little bit, but I'm going to talk about semaglutides, GLP-1s from a standpoint of how it affects your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, what to expect, and the best ways to navigate those if you choose to go on them. So let's start the discussion there. There are some people who are very much for GLP-1s. There are some that are very much against them. And so let's kind of set what we're talking about. Let's set the ground rules, so to speak, here with that. Let's do some education. So a semaglutide or a GLP-1, some people are calling it the fat shot, the shot. It is Ozempic, Wegovy. There's different formulas within that, tirzepatide, so many different formulas that are in the semaglutide, GLP-1, GLP-2 world and family. So, of course, they were originally designated to help people that have diabetes, but we're also seeing it, really help people who want to lose weight, and people are using them for those reasons. And so the way that happens is they are, first of all, a peptide. So all of these semaglutides, and we're just going to call them semaglutides for the sake of conversation, all these semaglutides are peptides, and peptides are not new. They have been on the market for years and years and years. They're just gaining traction and gaining speed right now. And there's actually multiple types of peptides. Multiple, like I can think of like 10 peptides off the top of my head that work with your mitochondrial function, that work with your insulin, gut repair. So a lot of different peptides. Now, people have a lot of really strong opinions on where they're at with these peptides, with semaglutide. And some people are very against them. Some people are very much for them. And so this conversation for today is not to decide if you are for them or against them. This is just going to be some education around taking them if that is what a person chooses to do. All right. So with those, there's a lot of different formulas that you can get. They do slow down your gastric emptying. So that's one of the things that they do that prevents the hunger from coming in, is they are going to slow down your gastric emptying. They can your food sits in your stomach longer, takes it longer to process, to go through the intestines, those types of things. And so that's where that weight loss component can come in, because you typically aren't going to continue to eat and eat and eat once you're full. So you're going to stay satisfied, have that higher satiety for a longer period of time. So that is where the weight loss part mostly comes from, is because you're not eating as many calories as you were eating at one time. Now, of course, they are there for diabetic control as well. And where that comes in is it creates more insulin sensitivity. If you are insulin resistant, these peptides can help you get more insulin sensitive in a quicker amount of time. So if you're currently insulin sensitive or insulin resistant, body is not processing carbohydrate the way that it should, you can reverse insulin resistance. You can do that through weight training. You can do that through quality foods. You can do that through partitioning out the way that you eat your meals. There's a lot of things that you can do. People have been insulin resistant for years, and they have reversed that. These peptides just allow you to reverse that insulin sensitivity in a quicker way and with the form of a medication. So it's not all natural if you're using a peptide versus naturally going about it on your own with lifestyle changes and adjustments. They've also helped with microdosing for some people who are going through menopause, perimenopause. A lot of folks do see that decline in estrogen, and they see that a GLP-1 allows them to have more insulin sensitivity because that decline in estrogen can make you more insulin resistant. So there's people that are using them in that field too. I've actually seen that almost come on the scene more hot and heavy for people that are in that space, in that perimenopause, menopause space, and they're using very small microdosing of some GLP-1s to try to work against what's all happening naturally with the hormone state. Now, GLP-1s, just like any other, it's a medication. It's something that you're putting in your body. It's not holistic. It is a choice on if you want to take those or not. We do see people that have a lot of what's called food noise, where they think about food all the time. They hear about food all the time. They are just, even as they're eating their meal, they're thinking about their next meal, and they have seen that if they take a GLP-1, semaglutide, whatever in that category, I know I keep bouncing back and forth, but if they take those, then that food noise quiets down. It shuts off that constant thinking about food. And so I've heard a camp of people. We have some clients in coaching that are on the GLP-1s that have had some really, really difficult time managing food noise. They're on a GLP-1 and it has slowed that down, right? So there are some people who are saying, I'm using a GLP-1 or a semaglutide, and I don't have diabetes. I'm choosing to take it because I'm working through some things with menopause. I'm choosing to take it because I have so much food noise, or some people are just saying, I want to try it and I want to see what it is like. Now, again, this podcast is not to say everybody should be on a semaglutide or nobody should be on a semaglutide. You know, who am I to say what everybody should or should not do? Everybody has to make their own choice and their own decision. I would say before you make any decision, you want to do a lot of research on that. You want to find what is right for you. You want to look at your history. You want to look at your family history. Look at the risks. There are risks involved. There are risks involved with every medication that you take. So there are some things that come with some very serious high risks. You want to look into those things. You want to make sure that you are not abusing it. You know, if you do have a very poor body image and you're taking a GLP-1, you're already relatively lean, and you continue to take it because you love to see that scale just continue to go down and down and down and down. You know, you might want to talk to somebody that works in mental counseling to help you with some of that, because these drugs can become very addictive. These drugs can become very dependent, where you are dependent on them, and that's what we're going to really talk about today. So on today's episode, we're, again, not going to talk about should you or should you not take a semaglutide. We're going to talk about should you choose to take one, just from a metabolic standpoint, just from a lifestyle standpoint, some things that you should expect, some things that you should be on the lookout for, some things that you should be aware of. And again, in coaching, we have some folks that are on a semaglutide. We have many who are not on a semaglutide. So we have seen record-breaking success with clients that are not on them, and we've seen success with clients that are on them. So can you have success with a GLP-1? You can. Can you have success without one? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, I've lost 150 pounds, and so absolutely you can have success. So again, let's talk about what happens from a metabolic standpoint, from a lifestyle standpoint, if you are on one, and what to expect. So we kind of hit on that in the beginning. Some things that you want to think about when you are taking one. We've already covered, we're not talking about risks. We're not talking about potential health indicators. We're not talking about any of that on today's episode. Like I said, we'll have somebody on here soon to discuss those things. But what we are going to talk about is what happens when you take a GLP-1. When you take a GLP-1, it is going to, as we were saying, slow down that digestive process. So your food is going to stay in the tract for a longer period of time. When that food stays in the tract for a longer period of time, you are going to be less hungry. Less hungry means less calories, and you're going to take in less calories over time. Over time, that creates a calorie deficit. When you're in a calorie deficit, you will continue to drop weight until you reach a place to whether they up your dose or you continue to decrease calories further. Now, studies have shown, and this is what we've seen in coaching as well, is that ideally, if you are taking a GLP-1, you want to eat the highest number of calories that you can on the lowest dose. This is the first mistake that many people make, because they're immediately like, I took this, I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat, and so I love this feeling of euphoria of never having to think about food, so I'm just not going to eat and live kumbaya. That is the first biggest mistake that you could make. So let's talk about this in a number standpoint. So in a number standpoint, let's say we'll use round fictitious numbers that on average before your GLP-1, you were eating 2,500 calories on every day. That's not uncommon to have a number of 2,500 calories every day. You go from eating 2,500 calories every day down to 1,500 calories every day. So you've decreased your calories by 1,000 calories every day straight out of the gate. So that is a huge calorie deficit. That's 1,000 calories that you are no longer eating. And now your body is going to drop very fast. You're probably going to see things like, even though you don't know that you're hungry because that gastric emptying has slowed, you're going to be like more on edge. You're going to be tired. You're going to have fatigue. And so you also are taking yourself down to like a lower baseline straight out of the gate. And that's not smart to do. So let's back up into that situation. If you are currently eating, let's back up even further. Before you even get on a semaglutide, track your macros for a week and see what you're currently eating. Like in real life, I haven't had a GLP-1. Where am I at? What am I eating? What is my baseline? What am I taking in? First and foremost. So that way you know where to come down from. And then I would pull that down by about 350 calories and create that deficit there between, that's 200, 350 calorie, all right? So what that does is you can already see if you're eating 2,500 and you pull that down by 300 calories and you're now eating 2,200, you have created a deficit. You're in a deficit. Your body will continue to drop fat when you're in that deficit, and that is sustainable. Then when you hit a place where that calorie count no longer works for you, you can go down just a little bit further, another 150 calories. And so you're stair-stepping that down and you're slowly starting to decrease calories. What this does is it allows you to stay in a deficit for longer and it gives you more of a runway. Let's go back to the first scenario. If you're at 2,500 calories and you go down to 1,500, you've already just slashed that down 1,000 calories, taken yourself down, not to bare bones, but you've taken yourself down pretty far, and then things stop working with your semaglutide, you hit a plateau, well, then you've got an option to either continue to increase your dose or take your calories down even further, right? And so then you start taking so then you're down to 1,300. And then what happens when 1,300 doesn't work? Okay, now I've got to go to like 1,150. That's not going to work, right? So you don't want to just hit the gas pedal, taking those calories all the way down or like a huge slash straight out of the gate. That is not what you want to do. You want to be strategic about it. You want to be smart about it. And you want to know what you're eating and how you're taking that deduction down. Now, the second part of that is you want to make sure that you are tracking your macros when you are on a semaglutide. That is so important. It's important because you want to make sure you're getting enough protein. Again, you're not going to have these high hunger cues. You're not going to want to eat all the time. And so when we are eating low calorie, low protein, we're going to start to lose muscle mass. And I know that many people are like, I hear that all the time, but I don't really know what that means. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. If I lose some muscle mass, I'll be okay, right? And so I get like what's the word? Like health, wellness, like the mainstream. I get the mainstream that it's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal if I lose some muscle mass, but it is a huge deal if you lose muscle mass. And we're going to talk through why that is such a huge deal. And you don't want to have this enormous amount of muscle mass when you are on a GLP-1. And that's what happens. I hear all the time people will come into coaching after GLP-1 and they're like, I'm squishy. Like I just feel really, really squishy. Like I'm lean, but you like put your hands in my arms and like your fingers just melt into my arms because I'm just a bag of squish, right? I'm a lean bag of squish, but I'm a bag of squish. Well, you've lost muscle mass. You do not want to lose muscle mass. You do not want to be a bag of squish. Nobody wants to be a bag of squish. You want to be, a good mix between good solid muscle and maybe a little bit of squish, right? So everybody's like, no, I just want to be good solid muscle, right? So that's what we say. Like, I want to be good solid muscle. Well, then you don't want to be a bag of squish, and you're going to be a bag of squish if you take your GLP-1 and you take your calories down to bare bones and you're not eating enough protein, you're not strength training, you will be a lean bag of squish. And what that's called in the fitness world is skinny fat. And so skinny fat is I'm skinny, but I have a higher fat ratio than before because I've lost so much muscle that actually if I looked at like a DEXA scan or I looked at my overall lean muscle mass, I've actually gotten fatter. Don't love that word, you guys know that, but I've actually gotten fatter because I've lost more muscle on my frame and I actually am leaner, but I have more fat on my body because I have less muscle. Skinny fat is a super common term over in the wellness and nutrition world. You do not want to be skinny fat, or as I'm saying, squish. You don't want to be squish. So again, you need to make sure that you're tracking your macros. You need to make sure that you understand what you're eating every day. How much protein are you getting in? How much fiber are you getting in? Are we just like, I'm not that hungry, so I'm hitting up Starbucks and I'm getting a big frappuccino and I'm getting a muffin and I'm spending 1,000 calories on a huge frappuccino and a muffin, and that's my meal for the day. If you are treating your semaglutide that way, you are going to be in regret city when you come off of that. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. And I'm being very straightforward on this because we've had people that have come into coaching and they have come off of a semaglutide, or they went on one, they tapered off of it themselves, and they found themselves in this position. And I'm going to be just very honest and very straightforward about how you need to take care of yourself if you choose to take one. So track your macros before you take it. If you're like, well, I'm already on it and I haven't been tracking my macros, start today. Track your macros today and see where you're at and see what you're doing. Then prioritize protein. You may need to drink more protein shakes. You may need to have more protein powders. They make clear protein. You may need to do more of that to get your protein in. Try to eat your meals. Try to eat veggies as much as possible. Like, you want your diet to be on point when you are on this medication, because you're already not going to get as many nutrients. You're not going to get as many vitamins in, as many minerals in, because you're not eating as much food. So the food that you do eat is very important. You want to make sure that you eat when you can, and when you can't eat because you're not hungry, make sure you're drinking something quality, drinking your protein shakes, those types of things. So important, guys, so important. And as a reminder, everyone should get 0.8 grams to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of ideal body weight. If you take your ideal body weight, multiply that by 0.8 grams or 0.8%, and that is the grams of protein that you need to eat every single day to have those amino acids, those building blocks, that protein in your body. Trust me. Do that. And you're going to look at that number and you're going to say, I don't know how I'm going to eat 125 grams of protein when I'm not hungry. You need to try to figure that out, because that's part of the process. That's part of not going into that skinny fat era. All right. Now, the other thing to think about is if you choose to ignore the advice, or if you're like, okay, I've already, kind of went down this road. I am somebody who's eating one meal a day. I'm probably getting 1,100 calories. What am I going to do? First, start strength training immediately. Start revamping your diet, getting more protein in, and start strength training as quick as you possibly can. Follow a progressive overload program. If you need that, we have that here with us in coaching. Follow progressive overload, work on building up that muscle mass ASAP. And here's why. Now, this is the part where we're going to talk about the squishy and the skinny fat again. When you lose weight so rapidly and so quickly, which is a calling card of a GLP-1 for most people who are not managing their lifestyle, your body is going to sacrifice that muscle mass. So your body is going to lose muscle mass. As we've talked about, it will lose some fat, but primarily it's going to sacrifice muscle, and you're going to lose that muscle. When you come off of a GLP-1 and your body starts to create those hunger cues again, your body wants to replenish those muscle stores as quick as possible. Remember, I always say this, your main job, the main reason the main way that God created your body to function is to stay alive, stay away from danger, and reproduce. Like, that is the body's primary functions. Stay alive, stay away from danger, reproduce. Like, that is what your body's up in the brain, like, aye, Captain, I hear what you're saying. That's the job. So when we've lost a ton of muscle mass, the body is saying, aye, Captain, here's the job. Stay alive, and let's get some muscle back in as quick as we can. Well, you cannot build muscle that quickly. And so the body wants to replenish those muscle stores as fast as it can. And so it will replenish those muscle stores with fat. And so that's where things start to get tricky, because then you've already got that skinny fat, that squish, and then you start eating more and your body craves more and it wants to refill those muscle stores, and it's going to refill them with fat. And that's what causes people who come off of a GLP-1 or any kind of extreme diet to put weight back on so quickly. They're like, I do not know how this weight came back on so quickly. Well, it's because your body is saying, again, aye, Captain, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to stay alive. And what I'm trying to do is replenish muscle as quickly as I can. And we can't build muscle that quickly. So we use the extra food that we're eating, and it creates more fat in those muscle stores. All right. This happened to me years ago. Before I lost my weight, years and years, like 20 years ago, I went on phentermine. And when I went on phentermine, I was having the time of my life on phentermine, all right? So I don't know if you've ever been on that, but it was like, I felt like I didn't eat for 3 days. I was maybe like 20 years old when I was doing phentermine. And you just took these little pills. You never ate. Never. And I got so lean when I was on phentermine, and I was living my absolute best 20-year-old life, honestly, on phentermine, so I thought, right? And so then I got down to a place and I was like, I'm really comfortable with my weight. I'm good here. I'm going to come off phentermine. And so I was totally ignorant to anything that was going on with it. And so I went off the phentermine, and what I'm explaining to you will happen with such rapid. I don't even know how much weight I lost. I don't even think I was weighing myself. I just was going by my clothes, right? And so then when I came off of it, guys, that was the start of me putting on weight to the extreme, because I hadn't been eating, and we're going to talk about that again here in just a second. I hadn't been eating. I started eating, and I was that squishy, and buddy, it came on like a vengeance. Like, I could not stop that weight from coming back on. So then it just continued to build and build and build, and that's what got me close to 300 pounds. So what happens also is, let's go back to the calorie portion of this. So let's say that over time you've gotten down to where you're eating 1,300 calories a day, and that's your baseline. That's where you're at. You're eating 1,300 calories a day. You never feel hungry. Not a problem. You're like, I've settled in here. This is where I'm at. This 1,300 every single day. What happens with that 1,300 is that becomes your baseline. You're never hungry at that. You're just living on, trucking your life. You taper off of the GLP-1, and then all of a sudden those hunger cues start coming back in. Your body's like, hey, we're hungry. We're hungry here. We don't have that slow gastric emptying, that brain gut connection starts firing off again, and that hunger becomes insatiable again, because inside your body is trying to refill those muscle stores. So then what happens at that point is you start to eat, and you start to eat like 1,800 calories a day, and you're like about to eat the drywall off the walls because you're starving. And guys, I've seen this happen so many times. And it is like a running train that you cannot stop. And so you try to stop, you try to pull it back, and then you're at 1,800 calories. And even at 1,800, you are like barely holding on to things, right? So then at that point, you have already created a 500 plus calorie surplus for yourself daily, going from I'm eating 1,300, never hungry on a GLP-1, to 1,800, starving and trying to hold on for dear life. That's 500 plus calories every day. You take 500 plus calories every day times 7 days, you've created yourself a pound plus a week that you're going to start gaining back. And you're going to gain that back. And even at 1,800, you're trying your best, like, not to eat everything that you see in sight. And so this is where people start to regain that weight back just crazy fast, because they can't control those hunger cues any longer. They can't control their intake. They weren't focused on quality foods during the GLP-1 journey. So let's go back to that. So during the GLP-1 journey, they were not eating quality foods. They weren't strength training. They weren't building muscle. They were living off of just fun foods, whatever they wanted to eat, whatever they felt like eating, because, hey, it doesn't really matter. I'm not eating that much, so I can just kind of eat whatever I want. And now you have those cravings of, hey, I still want to eat that Starbucks muffin and that Frappuccino, and that's 1,000 calories, and that doesn't even touch anything. Then I'm hungry 3 hours later. You haven't built any lifestyle factors. You haven't learned how to meal prep. You haven't learned how to have quality meals, 3 meals a day. You're not incorporating protein. So now you can't even think about putting those tools together because you're just trying to not eat the drywall off of the walls, okay? So again, you have to, if you are on a GLP-1 and you want to be successful, and you say, you know what, I'm going to be on this GLP-1, it's going to quiet some food noise down for me, it's going to help me through perimenopause by microdosing, I'm going to be on, I'm going to go through this journey. If you are on this journey, you need to be very real with yourself. You need to be very honest with how you are eating. And this is a time to get your lifestyle in check. This is not a time to act like a 20-year-old on phentermine living off of like Kraft macaroni and cheese and McDonald's nuggets. Like, you don't need to eat that way as an adult with some sense. Let's just be forward about it. You don't need to eat that way as an adult with some sense who is working on some other lifestyle factors to try to get your health and weight in order, right? And so again, this is not a discussion on if you should be on one or if you should not be. That is a personal decision that every person has to make. But every person who is on one needs to make sure that, I would say, 100 times over, get into coaching. This is when you want to learn, how do I do progressive overload strength training? How do I get my meals together? How do I eat enough protein even when I'm not hungry? How do I manipulate my calories and macros so that I'm in a good space, so that I don't get down here to bare bones 1,300, then I start to come off of it and I'm eating 18, 19, 2,000 calories and the weight is coming back on like crazy, because one, that's not good physically to have that weight gain rebound. And two, if not worse, it is mental torture. I would imagine, I can barely remember that part from my 20s, but I know I didn't feel good, obviously, because I kept feeding my feelings by eating more food, which is just a psychological crazy thing that we all do. Like, I feel bad for about eating this food, so then I'm going to eat more of this food, right? And so it just dug me deeper and deeper into a hole. So this episode is more of like just a informative, like PSA, like if you're on it, please be smart about it. And if you're not understanding these basic core components of your metabolic rate, how to build muscle, how to track your macros, how to make sure that you are not overdosing yourself on the GLP-1, how to make sure that you are eating enough quality food so that you can maintain your results. Guys, you've got to do those things. And this is the place to get the education. This is the place to learn, and understanding that, hey, I may not be hungry, but I still want to eat 1,600 calories a day, 1,700. Can I lose weight on that? The average rate of loss is 1 to 2 pounds a week. And if you're really lean, it's a half pound to a pound a week if you're extremely lean. If you've got more weight to lose, losing at around that 2 pound marker every week is a good place to be. You don't want to lose more than that. If you are losing an exorbitant amount of weight, if you're losing, 3-4 pounds a week over and over again, you are losing muscle mass. And we've talked about what happens when you lose that muscle mass. You'll get that squish, you'll get that skinny fat, and you are setting yourself up for some insane weight rebound, all right? Weight gain rebound. So this was a very forward episode, but these things need to be talked about. And Instagram influencers are not talking about this. They're talking about GLP-1s are great. They are fantastic. And again, everybody has their own opinion on those, but they're not talking about how do you manage if you are on one or if you're considering going on one. Not talking about the health implications. That's for another episode. But how do you manage your lifestyle if you are on one, and why that is so important for you to do that. All right, guys, thanks for listening to this episode for this week. If you have questions on semaglutides, GLP-1s, shoot me a DM. If you are interested in coaching, you're on one, and like, hey, it would be really good for me to get this in check before I taper off, let us know. You can reach out to us, of course, at livehillnutrition.net. You can send me a direct message. You can comment on this podcast. Any of those things will get connected with you. We do have some spots that are opening up with our new coach, Leah, on the team. So we do have some openings where before we were completely booked up. So we would love to help you through your GLP-1 journey so that you can have success while you are on it and success tapering off of it. All right. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode. If you have questions, definitely reach out. Thank you so much for sharing this podcast. Thank you for leaving reviews on all the different platforms. Of course, you can listen to this on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We have got it on every streaming podcast. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you on the next week's episode.